Have you ever walked into a garden center, grabbed a bag of potting mix, checked the price, and paused for a second thinking, wait, I'm paying how much for this? And then you toss it in your cart anyway, year after year, bag after bag, until one day it hits you that you've spent hundreds of dollars on something you could have made yourself and probably made better. Today I'm going to show you how to stop buying potting soil for good. Not because the store-bought stuff is useless, but because once you understand what's actually inside those bags and how incredibly simple it is to recreate and upgrade it, you'll never see them the same way again. By the end of this video, you'll know exactly how to build a living, airy, nutrient-rich potting mix tailored to whatever you grow. Vegetables, herbs, flowers, houseplants, even small fruit trees in containers. And here's the best part. You can make it cheaper, you can make it stronger, and you can make it last longer than almost anything sitting on a store shelf. Let's begin with something most gardeners are never told. Potting soil isn't actually soil. Real garden soil is dense and heavy. In the ground, that's fine. Nature provides drainage, earthworms, microbial life, and deep structure. But inside a container, that same soil compacts, holds too much water, and turns into a suffocating brick around your plant's roots. That's why commercial potting mixes feel so light. Because they aren't soil at all. They're engineered blends of organic materials and aeration components designed to accomplish three simple goals: create airspace, maintain balanced moisture, hold and supply nutrients. That's it. And once you understand those three pillars, you don't need a brand name. You just need ingredients. Almost every store-bought potting mix contains some version of the same core components: a moisture-holding base like peat moss or cocoa coir, an aeration material such as perlite or pumice, a nutrient source, usually compost, sometimes added slow-release fertilizer or wetting agents. That's the secret recipe. Now let's deconstruct it and rebuild it better. First, you need a moisture-retaining foundation. Cocoa coir is one of the best modern options. Made from coconut husks, it absorbs and holds water extremely well while still maintaining structure. It also rehydrates easily, even if it dries out completely. Unlike peat moss, it's renewable and considered more sustainable. Peat moss works too. It creates a light, fluffy structure and holds moisture effectively. Just keep in mind that once peat dries out fully, it can repel water and become difficult to re-wet. Whichever you choose, this moisture base should make up roughly 1/3 of your total mix. Next comes aeration. Roots don't just drink water, they breathe. Without oxygen in the root zone, plants weaken quickly. Compacted soil leads to rot, disease, and stunted growth. Perlite is the most common aeration ingredient, those small white volcanic particles you see in potting mixes. They're lightweight and improve drainage dramatically. Pumice is another excellent option. It's heavier than perlite and doesn't float to the surface over time, making it great for long-term containers. Coarse sand can work, but only if it's truly coarse. Fine sand compacts and reduces airflow, which defeats the purpose. Your aeration component should also account for about 1/3 of the mix. Now we get to the ingredient that transforms everything: compost. Compost isn't just fertilizer, it's life. It introduces beneficial microbes, organic matter, and a slow-release supply of nutrients that feed plants steadily instead of in sudden spikes. This is where homemade potting mix often outperforms commercial brands. Many store-bought mixes rely heavily on synthetic fertilizers and contain very little true compost. When you add rich, fully finished compost, dark, crumbly, and earthy smelling, you're building a living ecosystem inside your container. That final third of your mix should be high-quality compost. So your universal DIY potting mix looks like this: 1 part cocoa coir or peat moss, 1 part perlite or pumice, 1 part compost. Simple, balanced, powerful. But this is just the foundation. Because the real advantage of making your own mix isn't copying what's in a bag. It's adjusting it, precisely, for what you're growing. 1. Tomatoes and peppers. These are some of the most nutrient-demanding crops you can grow in containers. They don't just grow, they explode with growth. First come the thick stems and broad leaves, then the flowers, then heavy fruit clusters that pull nutrients and water constantly from a limited root zone. To sustain that level of production, 2 things must stay in perfect balance: oxygen at the roots and steady nutrition in the soil. If oxygen drops, roots suffocate. If nutrients run low, flowering slows and fruit size shrinks. Start with your balanced base mix. 1 part cocoa coir or peat moss for moisture retention, 1 part perlite or pumice for airflow, and 1 part rich compost for biology and nutrients. That's your foundation. Now you strengthen it for heavy feeders. Add a generous handful of worm castings per container. Worm castings are gentle but powerful. They provide slow-release nitrogen, trace minerals, enzymes, and beneficial microbes that help break down organic matter into plant-available nutrients. Unlike synthetic fertilizers, they won't cause nutrient burn or sudden growth spikes. Instead, they promote thick stems and deep green leaves that can actually support heavy fruit loads. Next, incorporate about a tablespoon of bone meal into the planting hole or mix it evenly through the container. Phosphorus is critical during early root development and later during flowering. Strong roots mean better nutrient uptake. Strong flowering means higher fruit set. Adding phosphorus at planting ensures it's available exactly when the plant transitions into bloom. Then include a small amount of finely crushed eggshells or powdered calcium. Calcium plays a direct role in cell wall strength. When it's lacking, and especially during irregular watering, tomatoes and peppers develop blossom end rot. While calcium alone won't fix inconsistent watering, having it present in the soil provides insurance against deficiencies. For an additional boost, you can blend in a modest amount of aged manure or an organic slow-release fertilizer at planting. Layered nutrition works best for these crops. Something immediately available and something that releases gradually over time. Structure is just as important as fertility. Tomatoes and peppers despise soggy conditions. If the mix feels dense, sticky, or slow to drain, increase the aeration slightly. In warm climates, containers heat up quickly and roots respire faster, meaning oxygen becomes even more critical. As flowering begins, supplement lightly every 2 to 3 weeks with compost tea, diluted fish emulsion, or a balanced organic liquid feed. Once fruits begin forming, shift toward a blend slightly higher in phosphorus and potassium to support fruit swelling rather than excessive leaf growth. When everything is dialed in, you'll see it immediately. Deep green, vibrant foliage, thick, sturdy stems, continuous flowering, heavier clusters, sweeter, fuller fruits. In containers, space is limited. You're not just feeding the plant, you're engineering the entire environment for maximum yield. 2. Leafy greens like lettuce and spinach. Leafy greens have a completely different mission. They aren't trying to produce fruit. They aren't building woody stems. Their goal is rapid, tender leaf production. That means their soil needs shift slightly toward moisture consistency and nitrogen availability. Start with the same base mix, but adjust the balance. Reduce the perlite slightly. Greens still need airflow, but not at the aggressive level required by fruiting crops. Too much drainage in shallow containers can cause the soil to dry too quickly, leading to stress. Increase the compost portion modestly. Lettuce and spinach thrive on nitrogen. Nitrogen fuels chlorophyll production, which creates that rich green color and soft, lush growth. More compost also increases microbial activity, which supports steady nutrient cycling. The ideal texture should feel light yet moisture retentive. When you squeeze it, it should hold its shape briefly, then crumble apart. It should feel cool and evenly damp, never sticky and never dusty. Because leafy greens grow quickly, they deplete available nutrients faster than many gardeners expect. If you harvest continuously by trimming outer leaves, the plant keeps pushing new growth. But that requires consistent feeding. A light compost tea or diluted fish emulsion feeding every 2 to 3 weeks keeps growth steady and prevents pale or yellowing leaves. Water consistency is critical. Allowing greens to dry out fully can cause bitterness, stress, and early bolting. Increasing compost slightly helps buffer moisture swings and keeps the root zone cooler. In warmer weather, a thin layer of mulch, straw, or shredded leaves over the soil surface helps maintain stable moisture and temperature. This small step can extend your harvest window significantly. When the mix is balanced correctly, the improvement is obvious. Leaves expand quickly and evenly. Color remains deep and vibrant. Texture stays tender. Harvest lasts longer before bolting. For greens, the priority isn't maximum drainage, it's balanced moisture and steady nitrogen. Tomatoes and peppers demand intensity and airflow. Leafy greens demand consistency and softness. Same base formula, different ratios. And that's the real advantage of making your own potting mix. You stop relying on generic blends and start tailoring the environment to exactly what each plant needs. 3. Herbs like basil and parsley. Herbs fall right between leafy greens and heavy fruiting crops. They grow quickly, especially basil, but they don't need the intense feeding schedule that tomatoes or peppers demand. In fact, overfeeding herbs is one of the fastest ways to reduce what makes them special. And what makes them special is flavor. Begin with your standard base mix: cocoa coir or peat for moisture balance, compost for life and nutrients, and perlite or pumice for airflow. Then fine-tune it. First, slightly increase the aeration. Add a bit more perlite or pumice than you would for lettuce or spinach. Most herbs, particularly Mediterranean varieties, prefer their roots to breathe freely. Soil that stays constantly wet leads to weak growth and fungal issues, especially in humid conditions. Second, scale back the compost just a little. Basil and parsley need nutrients, but not an overly rich blend. When herbs grow in soil that's too fertile, they often produce rapid, soft growth with diluted essential oils. The leaves may look impressive, but the aroma and flavor become weaker. Balanced soil produces stronger taste. For basil, moderate, steady nutrition keeps the plant bushy and productive without sacrificing intensity. A gentle feeding every 3 to 4 weeks using diluted compost tea is usually more than enough. Parsley is slightly more nutrient-hungry than many herbs, so mixing a small handful of worm castings into the soil at planting provides slow-release nitrogen that supports continuous harvest without overstimulation. Drainage remains a priority. Herbs dislike sitting in constantly wet soil. If the container never dries out at least partially between waterings, roots can struggle. Early signs of trouble include yellowing leaves, drooping even when the soil feels moist, and reduced fragrance. Pot size also influences results. Smaller containers dry faster and can intensify flavor slightly, but they demand closer watering attention. Larger containers provide more stability and consistent growth. If you're growing rosemary, thyme, oregano, or other Mediterranean herbs, increase drainage even further. These plants evolved in rocky, mineral soils with rapid drying cycles. More perlite or pumice and less compost will better replicate those conditions. When your balance is correct, the difference is clear. Basil grows dense and upright with richly scented leaves. Parsley remains deep green and productive. Fragrance strengthens noticeably. Flavor becomes concentrated instead of mild. The guiding principle with herbs is simple. They thrive on moderation, not excess. 4. Succulents and cacti. Succulents and cacti operate under completely different rules. Their roots are designed for dry climates where rainfall is infrequent and soil drains almost instantly. Growing them in standard potting mix is one of the most common reasons they fail. For these plants, soil structure matters more than fertility. Start with just 1 part cocoa coir, enough organic material to retain a small amount of moisture and anchor the roots. Then add 2 parts perlite or pumice to dramatically increase drainage and airflow. Pumice is especially useful because it adds weight and stability while maintaining excellent porosity. If available, mix in coarse sand or small gravel to further mimic desert conditions. Be sure it's coarse. Fine sand compacts and blocks airflow, which defeats the purpose. Compost should be minimal. A small amount can provide trace nutrients, but too much organic matter holds water and increases the risk of root rot. Succulents don't need rich soil. They need oxygen around their roots. Watering technique is equally important. These plants prefer deep, thorough watering followed by complete or near-complete drying. A fast draining mix makes this cycle possible. Light, frequent watering keeps the soil constantly damp, and that's when problems begin. Container choice also plays a role. Terracotta pots allow moisture to evaporate through the sides, helping soil dry faster. Plastic containers retain moisture longer and require more cautious watering. When the mix is correct, you'll notice leaves remain firm and plump. Growth stays compact and structured. Stems stay solid without blackening. Roots appear white and healthy if inspected. If the mix holds too much moisture, warning signs appear quickly. Yellowing leaves, soft stems, or collapse at the base. With succulents and cacti, simplicity wins. Less compost, less frequent watering, more mineral content, more airflow. Success isn't about pushing growth with fertilizer. It's about recreating the fast-draining, mineral-rich environment these plants evolved to handle. Once you understand how to shift your base mix for herbs compared to succulents, you gain full control. You're no longer dependent on specialized bags for every plant type. You start building soil with intention, and that's when you truly stop buying potting soil, not because you know how to create something better. 5. Strawberries. Strawberries may be small plants, but they are anything but low maintenance. They have shallow root systems, they grow quickly, and during the season they're producing leaves, runners, flowers, and fruit almost non-stop. That constant activity demands a soil mix that stays evenly moist, slightly acidic, and gently fertile, all at once. They don't handle extremes well. Let them dry out and berries become small and overly seedy. Keep them too wet and roots begin to suffocate or rot. Starve them of nutrients, and fruit production slows dramatically. So everything comes down to balance. Begin with your standard base mix. Cocoa coir or peat for moisture management, compost for nutrients and microbial life, and perlite or pumice for aeration. Then tailor it specifically for strawberries. First, increase the compost portion slightly. Strawberries are consistent feeders. Because their roots stay near the surface, they rely heavily on the upper soil layer for nutrients. A bit more compost provides steady, slow-release fertility and improves the soil's ability to hold moisture without becoming waterlogged. Second, incorporate pine bark fines if available. Pine bark serves two important purposes. It gradually supports a mildly acidic environment, which strawberries prefer, and it enhances structure by creating small air pockets that reduce compaction. Strawberries perform best in slightly acidic conditions. Pine bark helps maintain that range naturally while also improving drainage and water distribution throughout the container. The texture you're aiming for should feel light and fluffy, yet capable of holding consistent moisture. When watered, the mix should absorb evenly instead of allowing water to rush straight through. After a deep watering, it should remain lightly damp for a day or two. Never soggy, but not dry within hours. Because strawberries produce continuously during their fruiting window, they benefit from steady nutrition. Mixing a small handful of worm castings into the container at planting provides gentle nitrogen and beneficial microbes. During peak fruit production, supplementing every 2 to 3 weeks with a mild liquid feed can help maintain energy levels. Water consistency is especially important for strawberries. Uneven watering often leads to irregularly shaped fruit or reduced sweetness. Stable moisture allows the plant to focus energy on fruit development instead of stress recovery. Adding a layer of mulch, such as straw or shredded leaves, over the surface makes a noticeable difference. It helps keep shallow roots cool, reduce evaporation, prevent soil from splashing onto berries, maintain even moisture levels. In warmer climates, containers can heat up quickly, putting extra stress on those shallow roots. Choosing a slightly larger pot and applying mulch helps moderate temperature swings. When your mix is dialed in correctly, you'll see clear signs of success. Evenly colored, healthy green leaves, strong flower formation, firm, well-sized berries, improved sweetness due to reduced plant stress. If the soil is too compact, plants may wilt even when the mix feels wet. If it drains too quickly, fruit may struggle to fully develop during swelling stages. Strawberries don't need the extreme drainage required by succulents. They don't require the intense feeding schedule of tomatoes. They need steady, reliable support, slight acidity, consistent nutrients, moisture that stays balanced yet breathable. When you create that environment, strawberries respond generously, turning a simple container into a productive, ongoing harvest system rather than just a decorative planter.